Chapter 3. Cedric was gracious as he accepted congratulations and well wishes from the other Hogwarts students. Smiling for them was tedious, but avoiding them was more so. Cedric's ire over having 3 competitors in the tournament, rather than 2, had worn away shortly after the other champions were announced. He was confident in his abilities, and he found the other champions non-threatening. As for the rest of the students' opinion on the matter, truthfully, he was rather apathetic about 3 of the houses referring to him as the true Hogwarts champion, but he soon recognized an unanticipated effect of being seen as such. The rest of the school, even most of Potter's own yearmates, were beginning to alienate him, regardless of his popularity the year before, or even a few weeks before. This wasn't an uncommon event, of course. 2 years previously, people had honestly been scared of being alone with the 12-year-old Potter. The year before that, Potter's own housemates had treated him with scorn for a period of time. This year, however, Cedric was delighted to realize that Potter was being actively harassed by most of the student body, and even his Weasley friend was hardly ever seen at his side anymore. Thus, Cedric remained gracious and humble as the houses lent him their support, but he didn't exactly discourage their attention either. It wasn't difficult for Cedric to find Potter alone. He only had to keep an eye on Granger. Whenever Cedric saw her with Weasley, he immediately knew that Potter would be somewhere else, alone. Just a week or 2 after the champions were named, Cedric noticed Granger and Weasley leaving the dining hall together one evening after dinner. When Potter stood from the Gryffindor table shortly after, Cedric saw him turn towards the library as he left the Great Hall.
"I'm off," Cedric told Jack and his other yearmates. "I'll see you lot in the dorms."
His Slytherin friends waved him off, and Cedric left the Great Hall and started after Potter. He caught up with the younger student only a minute later.
"Hey," Cedric casually greeted as he fell into step beside Potter.
"Oh, hey, Cedric. You all right?" Potter asked in greeting.
"Sure, although with all the excitement I've fallen a bit behind in my schoolwork. We have an exam in charms tomorrow that I've barely had time to study for, what with people constantly interrupting me while I'm working. I'm hoping to find a quiet table in the library tonight."
After hesitating for a moment, Potter said, "I can show you my hiding place. There's a room full of historical legal texts that no one goes near. It's almost as good as sitting under an invisibility cloak."
"You don't mind sharing?"
Cedric asked, but only because he knew Potter wouldn't hesitate to say yes. "Not at all. I have a potions essay to write, and I wouldn't mind the company."
"Thanks," Cedric told him, treating Potter with his handsomest grin.
In the library, Cedric was surprised when Potter did indeed lead him to a room which Cedric had never noticed before. It was located near the back of the library with a tapestry-covered entrance.
"How do you even know about this room?"
Cedric asked, as they settled at a small, intimate table next to a window with a pleasant view of the grounds. "Hermione practically lived here last year, when she was helping Hagrid research a legal defense for Buckbeak," Potter explained as he pulled his supplies from his bag and spread them out over the table. Cedric hummed, vaguely remembering gossip about a rogue hippogriff attacking a pureblood the year before and being executed for it. He found it laughable that Potter's friend had tried to prepare a defense for the beast, but of course would never say anything to such effect. Potter didn't seem that upset about it anyways, so Cedric didn't press for details.
"How have you been, then?"
he asked instead, as he pulled his own supplies out of his bag.
"I hear some of my housemates are giving you trouble."
"No more than usual," Harry replied dismissively. "It's really Ron that's being a prat."
"Weasley?" Cedric asked. "I thought he was your friend."
With a sharp exhale, Potter angrily told him, "I thought so too. He's angry that I didn't tell him I put my name in the goblet. I couldn't let him in on a secret I didn't know about myself, though, could I?"
"He's known you for 3 years and still doesn't trust you?" Cedric pointedly pressed.
"I guess not," Potter replied, the anger abruptly leaving him as his shoulders slumped dejectedly. Cedric reached across the table and laid his hand on Potter's forearm.
"Try not to let him bother you," he gently instructed. "If he doesn't know better by now, it's his problem, not yours. And if this tournament has been anywhere near as disruptive to your life as it has been to mine, you can't afford more distraction. Are your classes going well?"
Releasing a long breath, Potter replied, "No, I guess not. But that's, honestly, it's normal. The entire time I've been at Hogwarts, there's been something going on to distract me, and I get by."
"With the tournament and someone putting your name in the goblet, I'm not sure that getting by would be such a good thing this year," Cedric pointed out. "How about this? We meet here every couple days and I'll help you with your homework."
Potter's eyes widened at the proposal, and he began to shake his head. "Thank you. I really appreciate the offer, but you're just as caught up in all this as I am, and you're behind." Cedric waved a dismissive hand.
"I'll be caught up in a matter of days. Besides, I've never had distractions from schoolwork before, and I've already completed all the lessons and assignments the professors are assigning you this year. Glancing over your work won't be a problem. Really."
"Wow," Potter murmured. If you're sure, then I guess I wouldn't mind the help. Let me know if I'm pestering you or anything, though, okay? I don't want to be a bother.
I'm sure you won't, Cedric assured.
Potter really did need a fair bit of tutoring. It turned out that over the years, his frequent adventures had proven to be horribly disruptive to his schooling, and as a result, he had missed numerous lessons on basic magic principles. As he said, he got by, but mostly on pure stubbornness, it seemed.
You're not using the correct wand movements, Cedric said in awe at one point while reviewing charms with Harry. That spell shouldn't be working at all for you.
After Cedric showed Potter the correct wand movements, and he tried the spell again, Potter let out a low whistle. I see what you mean! That was way easier! It didn't take as much magic! Cedric absently hummed before telling Potter he wanted to move on to potions, so he could help Potter review proper ingredient preparation techniques. It seemed that Potter was terrible at potions, which was odd, considering the fact that he did well enough in his other subjects. You're really good at this, Potter told him after one of their study sessions, as he looked over the notes Cedric had made to one of Potter's essays. Hermione tries to help me with my homework sometimes, but she usually has too much information on a subject and just ends up making my head spin. You're better at explaining things than she is. Or any of the professors, even. Cedric found himself preening under the genuine praise. This had begun to occur more and more often as of late. He had tutored younger students in his house before, and they often thanked him for his help and admired Cedric's intellect. But the way Potter complimented him was something else entirely. You're better than my best friend and the professors, Cedric heard him say. I understand that you could be somewhere else, doing something else, and I appreciate the time you're dedicating to me.
You're a good student, Cedric found himself genuinely replying, and Potter beamed at him. I wish there was some way I could repay you, though, the younger Gryffindor eventually said. You could treat me to lunch during the next Hogsmeade weekend, Cedric suggested. Potter blinked at him. Wouldn't you rather spend time with your friends? He asked. You're my friend, Cedric pressed, and felt satisfaction from the color which rose to Potter's cheeks as a result. Well, okay then, yeah, that would be fun, I think. Good, Cedric replied with a firm nod. Chapter 4. What's this? Cedric asked when he and Potter met in the front hall for the first Hogsmeade weekend of the year. He ran his hands over Potter's shoulders, touching the knit of his sweater. It was clearly handmade. The quality of the yarn was poor, and although the pattern of the sweater was simple, Cedric eyed the seams and immediately knew it was expertly crafted. His mother had grumbled over the difficulty of that particular stitch for weeks when she'd first started learning it. Regardless of how well made the sweater, it looked a bit ridiculous on Harry. It was clearly too small for him, riding up his waist to show an inch of the shirt he wore underneath, and the cuffs fell high on his wrists. Mrs. Weasley made it for me, Potter chipperly informed him. She gives us all one every year for Christmas. She usually makes them a little big, he explained sheepishly, but I guess I had a growth spurt this summer or something, so it's a bit small now. It was this or school robes, though, so... You can get something better in Hogsmeade today, Cedric told him. Better and warmer, he thought. Our Hogsmeade trip will be cut hours short if he wears that around and gets cold. Are any of your friends coming? Potter shook his head. Ron's still being a prat, and since I'm going to Hogsmeade with you, I told Hermione she could go with him. She's tried really hard not to take sides, but, well... It's a good thing you're spending the day with me, then, so she doesn't need to worry about you today, Cedric told him as he and Harry started towards the village. Any ideas where you'd like to have lunch? I don't mind visiting Frederick's, but I'm partial to the bakery on the west side of the village as well. Potter blinked at him with wide eyes. I don't know about any of those places. I mean, I didn't have permission to go to the village last year. I snuck out of the castle to visit once, but... This will be your first time exploring the village? This day will be even more fun than I thought. I'll show you all the best shops, Cedric promised. Yeah, okay, Potter easily agreed. The morning went well enough. Cedric took Potter to one of the clothing shops to get him a proper jumper, ensuring that he wouldn't grow cold in the autumn weather while they wandered the village. As they walked through one of the neighborhoods toward Cedric's favorite bookstore, he asked, Why didn't you have permission to visit the village last year? Was your permission revoked? Spencer Haversham is the last person I heard of anything like that happening to, and it was because he vandalized one of the shops. What? No, nothing like that. My aunt and uncle never gave me permission in the first place, Potter explained, as he curiously eyed the houses and yards they passed. Why not? Cedric asked. Because they hate me, Potter plainly answered, and Cedric blinked at his dismissive tone. Why do all the yards have orbs in them? Do they do something? They get bright whenever dangerous predators wander out of the forest. They alert the villagers and allow them to see easily if it's night. If your aunt and uncle wouldn't give you permission last year, why did they agree this year? He pressed, insistently keeping with the topic. They didn't, Potter hummed. My godfather signed the permission slip for me. I didn't know you had a godfather, Cedric said slowly. Neither did I until last year. He's Sirius Black. At this information, Cedric stopped walking and took a deep breath. The escaped criminal who killed 13 people, he confirmed. He signed your Hogsmeade permission slip for you? Potter grinned at Cedric's incredulous expression. He was wrongly accused and imprisoned, Potter gently explained, clearly delighting in Cedric's obvious unease. I'll explain it all during lunch if you like. It's kind of complicated, and, well, you have to promise to keep it secret. Beginning to walk again, Cedric said, You have a lot of secrets, don't you? I suppose, Potter told him, mostly because people don't like to hear them, though. I would, Cedric insisted. I knew being your friend would be exciting to say the least, but you get more complicated by the day. Having second thoughts? Potter wryly asked. No, Cedric stated, throwing an arm over Potter's shoulder. None. After visiting the bookstore, they ate at Frederick's, and Cedric watched with a smile as Potter ate traditional German food for the first time. The Gryffindor disliked half of what he tried, but was eager to get a taste of everything at least once. As they ate, Potter explained his childhood to Cedric. He told him about growing up with muggles who greatly feared magic, hid its existence from him, and lied to him about how his parents had died. Potter claimed that receiving his Hogwarts letter was the best day of his life, until he learned that a dark wizard had killed his parents and had attempted to kill him, and that wizard hadn't been properly destroyed by the backlash of his failed spell. Potter then explained his first 3 years of Hogwarts to Cedric, admitting that there were some parts he couldn't share with Cedric because the headmaster had requested that Harry keep certain information to himself. The more Cedric learned, the better he understood Potter's easy disposition. The younger student was so used to cruelty that even the smallest kindness seemed a monumental feat of generosity to him. He was so accustomed to the adults around him treating him with little to no regard that he had been forced to care for himself and grow up far too quickly. He was so starved for affection that he eagerly anticipated every scrap of positive attention he might receive. Cedric was mildly surprised that no one else had picked up on this and taken advantage of it before now. As they finished their meal and planned the rest of their afternoon, Cedric took deep satisfaction in the fact that he had seen the potential before anyone else, and that he had acted quickly and efficiently enough that he would be able to ensure that no one else would have the chance to do the same. It was the first time that Cedric and Potter went anywhere together in public. They received quite a bit of attention, and their fellow students blatantly stared and whispered when the pair walked through the village's main street towards Honeydukes, so they could pick up some sweets. Potter was clearly used to such attention, and Cedric had become accustomed to it over the past weeks, since his name had come out of the goblet. Get used to the sight, Cedric thought with satisfaction, as heads turned towards them while they walked. It will become common soon enough. Despite the attention they received, no one approached them until they were in the candy shop, and they ran into Jack and Cedric's other friends while there. As Potter inspected a display of fruited candy, Cedric felt a hand on his shoulder and found himself turning to face his friend Jack. "What are you doing with Potter?" Jack asked quietly, his eyes flicking to the younger student at Cedric's back. "I'm seducing him," Cedric quietly replied, watching as Jack's eyes grew wide with disbelief. "You're what?" Jack hissed, his eyes flickering wildly from Potter to Cedric. "Why?" "Because I'm going to date him," Cedric replied. "What? Have you lost your mind?" Jack urgently muttered. Is this about the tournament or something? Are you, Jack shifted uneasily at the very thought of Cedric entering into a relationship with the other champion, simply to get ahead of the competition. "Of course not," Cedric replied with a frown. "Don't be daft, Jack. I wouldn't do something like that." Jack let out a relieved sigh. "Okay, good. I know you said, and you can get a little intense about things sometimes, and..." With an irritated sigh, Cedric said, "Look, we'll talk about this later, okay? Right now you're interrupting my date, so shove off." With another aggravated huff, Jack said, "We will talk about this later, extensively, using small words and diagrams if we have to, because what you're suggesting is completely mad." "Later," Cedric insisted, before pointedly turning his back to Jack and moving to stand at Potter's side. "These," he said after a moment, pulling a box from the shelf and handing them to the younger teen. "You peel them like oranges, but each slice is flavored with a different type of fruit." "Perfect," Potter decided. "Would you like a box as well?" "Sure," Cedric easily agreed. Later, after they finished touring Hogsmeade and returned to the castle, Potter told Cedric, "I had fun today. Thank you for inviting me. You've been really kind to me." Smiling, Cedric told him, You deserve it.
Then leaned down and pressed a quick chaste kiss to Potter's temple, avoiding his messy bangs and glasses. When he pulled away, Potter was blinking at him owlishly, clearly blindsided by the show of affection.
Enjoy the rest of your evening, Harry. I'll see you in the library on Monday after classes.
Yeah, bye, Cedric, he replied. After dinner, Jack and Elliot herded Cedric down to their dorms to interrogate him. What are you doing? Was how Jack began the conversation.
I told you.
Harry Potter, Jack cried. Cedric, you can't date that little cheat. Yeah, mate, Elliot put in. Even if he wasn't a competing champion, that kid has always been trouble.
I thought he was a cheat too, at first, Cedric revealed to his friends. After spending time with him, though, I don't think he put his name in the goblet.
What do you mean? Elliot questioned, his brow furrowed. Spending time with him? Jack incredulously asked. How much time are we talking about?
I've been tutoring him for the past few weeks, Cedric revealed. I've gotten to know him, and today over lunch he told me about his childhood and his first years at Hogwarts. He's had it rough, and honestly, I don't believe he put his name in the goblet. I think someone else did it, hoping that he might die while competing in the tournament.
Jack's eyebrows rose. You think someone's trying to kill him? You sound like one of those paranoid conspiracy theorists. Maybe you should start writing articles for the Quibbler.
Jack, I'm serious, Cedric snapped. He's almost been killed a dozen times since he started school. He's fought the Dark Lord twice. Sirius Black is his godfather, falsely accused of murder and locked away without a trial, while the real culprit faked his death and then lived in hiding for 12 years. He witnessed a prophecy last year. The year before that, his best friend's little sister was possessed. The year before that, one of his professors attempted to murder him. This tournament isn't a game anymore. It hasn't been since Potter's name came out of the goblet.
Merlin, you actually like the kid, Jack stated, his eyes wide, and Cedric blinked at the accusation. After a moment, Cedric shrugged. I told you. It's time, he stated. Sure, Elliot agreed. But Potter, why?
He's a good person, Cedric informed them, and he needs someone to look out for him. He's still young, but he had to take care of himself most of his life.
Cut the crap, Jack demanded.
Fine, Cedric snapped back. He's a powerful, influential wizard who stands to inherit not only one, but two great names. He's old enough that he's not a child any longer, but he's young enough that I can influence how he learns to interact with the rest of the world. He's a light wizard, he's kind, generous, attractive, wealthy, interesting, and generally tolerable as a human being. He's the best option.
Turning to Jack, Elliot asked, Should we warn Potter or something? It would be irresponsible not to, right? Cedric rolled his eyes, but Jack sighed and seriously considered their options for a moment. No, he finally decided. Cedric's never been malicious or anything.
You aren't my keepers, Cedric hotly declared.
We kind of are, Elliot argued, because, no one else has figured out that something's off about you. Cedric's eyes narrowed at Elliot, and Jack sighed. We're worried about you, he reminded Cedric, especially if you insist on getting involved with Harry Potter. When you're competing against each other and someone's trying to kill him, Elliot helpfully added. Could we at least meet him or something? Jack requested.
After we're officially going out, Cedric conceded.
Jack frowned, but agreed.